Hey guys, how's it going? Eli here, back with another video where today we're going to be having a conversation about how to predict kind of the future, or I should say future trends within the Pokemon market. Without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So as always, doing our weekly giveaways, all you have to do to be entered into those is be subscribed to the YouTube channel and then leave a like and comment down below on any of the videos we post each and every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Of course, since you can comment and like on each of those videos, that allows you for 3 entries, on top of the fact of the matter that you also will have multiple opportunities to win, because we do have 3 winners that will each be receiving a Brilliant Star booster packs. Now, once we hit 2,500 subs, that is going to go up to 12 Brilliant Star booster packs. So we will just continuously give out more packs each and every time we have more winners. So without further ado, let's just jump into today's topic. So the premise of kind of the video that I'm going to be making, obviously I've talked about, indicators, on why I think you could see potentially a Pokemon market crash. I've talked about indicators when talking about a Pokemon market bottom. But one of the things I really wanted to talk about is looking at the kind of long-term expectations of the Pokemon hobby. We really do talk about the hobby within such a short time frame, typically within, a period of within the next year or so. But we really don't talk about the long-term outlook of Pokemon in and of itself. And so the reason why I actually kind of came up with this conversation and really thought about it was I was on a live stream last night. Shout out to Jake from Pokenomics. I was blessed enough to have him on the live stream. You can go check that out on his YouTube channel. And there was a discussion that we had, because I was at a round table with Northwoods and the Nostalgia. And there was a round table that we were all kind of having a discussion on. And one of the common themes that I felt like a lot of people were really touching on in regards to making predictions, it always, came back to, we don't know what the future of Pokemon is going to be. We don't know what the future of Pokemon is going to be. So nothing's 100%. And although I 100% agree, and I just realized I'm actually going to change over to the different side, but sorry for getting off track. But although I, of course, agree nothing's 100%, there's one thing that I feel like, was not really talked about enough. And there wasn't a lot of credibility, I feel like, that needs to truly be given about just looking at long-term analytical data in regards to predicting, why Pokemon in and of itself could potentially, see another explosion like this within the next couple of years. And, for those people that have been following my channel for a while, for literally the longest time, I want to say straight up from, back in April or May, I made a video that kind of popped off where I was talking about could the potential, market finally see its cracks. And then I made another video that popped off at some point in October, right before you saw the market actually take an absolute massive dive. So it was one of those things where you literally saw a large period of time on my channel where I was talking about a sentiment that was very much bearish. And I had a lot of people, talk to me saying, are you a little too bearish? Are you just not someone that believes in Pokemon the product? And obviously, if you've been following me and my channel, that's very not true, which is one of the reasons why we talk a lot about investing opportunities, predominantly within the channel. And it's just one of those things where being able to understand times of buying opportunities versus times of selling opportunities is very important. When you're looking at bull markets, or markets where, just everything's going up, up, and up, that's not the time you usually want to be buying. That's the time you want to be selling. It's the time when things are going down, 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 and you're seeing a lot of these bottoming prices and going in at those bottom price points, and you're not being emotional and you're being able to recognize the times to get in. That's when you're making those smart financial decisions. And so being able to predict the kind of long-term expectation of that and really go into some of the numbers on what we could potentially see, and even me myself giving some long-term predictions on what could potentially happen or what we could see for price of certain Pokemon cards. So the first thing I kind of want to get into, this is the Google Trends chart. If people want to look it up, everyone always asks me this question. And so for those people that don't know, I've been using the Google Trends chart for a while, because since there isn't an actual hard data chart in regards to graphing specific Pokemon demand, I've really liked to use this chart because it does still recognize keyword searches for Pokemon cards. And when you have that shows an interest over time, specifically for Pokemon cards within the hobby. And it actually shows up very much so like a graph. If you take a look at how this chart is actually formed, you can see a very similar formation to something like a chart that kind of Bitcoin happened. It goes up, it has its peak, it goes down and starts going down more, up, had its peak, goes down and goes down more. It's literally essentially following, one for one some of the other technical charts that Bitcoin has followed, and then Bitcoin and both, Pokemon have followed the market. So, and this is a chart that really spans out to as early as 2004, which I think is a really good kind of number when taking a look at, okay, overall demand in the market. You can talk about WotC or Wizards of the Coast era, but I think talking up until the Great Recession is one of those pieces that is going to be an important part in really going back and trying to take predictions on how you could see exponential growth within this market. And so the first thing I really want to talk about is just looking at the kind of inception of what kind of caused a little bit of a die out in Pokemon. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people that made the argument that, once you kind of had Wizards of the Coast lose their rights to Pokemon and they transferred over, that you started to see a die out in demand. But if you really ultimately want to say, okay, where did the true demand start to die out? It saw a little bit of kind of a peak at the time over back in June of 2007. And then, of course, shortly after, you obviously had, a market recession, and the price, or I shouldn't even say the price, but yeah, specifically prices, but the demand for Pokemon product really started to kind of waver. And it went down and it went down and it went down. And then there was a little bit of kind of life in the market, but it really didn't go, anywhere. And it was basically going sideways. It wasn't until, surprisingly enough, in the XY era, where there was a little bit of an upswing in regards to, the kind of popularity of Pokemon, but this really just had to do with natural demand growth over time. And what do I mean by natural demand growth over time? When it comes to an overall hobby, when taking a look at what shows healthiness in a hobby or healthiness in an asset, as you see growth over time, you should be having more people entering into the market than leaving out of the market. And so naturally, because of that, you should see a natural rise in demand. Of course, there are going to be spikes in demand, and those are typically going to be in bull market trends, where it's just a large period of a full-on trend. And so you could make an argument that the real breakout point for this really started back in 2013, and you started to see that kind of like slow incline all the way up right before you had Pokemon Go. So it's interesting because you had a lot of people actually leave the market within the level X and the black and white era, and then near the back end of black and white, you started to see a lot of people actually come back into the market and start with XY. Now, whether that be because people had interest in 3DS and they thought, the Mega Evolutions were a cool concept and it brought a nostalgia to it, but it wasn't enough to really drive a huge amount of interest within the Pokemon market. It wasn't really until you had the, Pokemon Go bubble and Evolutions came out where that kind of real drive and demand of product just started to, start going back up again, because people really were reliving their nostalgia. And that's another thing to consider too, guys, when talking about what kind of causes the Pokemon market to have its booms that it does. I mean, historically speaking, it really comes down to a lot of people getting back into the hobby because of nostalgia, and that's really what runs this market, I think we were talking last night with Northwoods. He thought it was very fascinating because I kept having a conversation with him saying, my favorite era growing up was Level X era. I absolutely fell in love with it. He's like, that's funny because that's the era that he left, because he absolutely does not like the era. But of course, 10 years later, kids my age grow up, and then eventually they want to go and collect Level X era cards, and you see a huge explosion and spike, especially around the time of the Arceus game and the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl remakes, that caused really that kind of influx of demand because people were nostalgic. And so you might say to yourself right now, I don't believe in XY product, I don't believe in Sun and Moon product, I don't believe in Sword and Shield product specifically, but you're going to have to understand that there's always going to be that large influx of demand that's going to come into the market over time, because as long as you do have people that are, of this generation, whether it be kids within their, early teens or, elementary school, or even college kids that enjoy it, down the line, for those people that do want to relive their childhood, because nostalgia is a very strong thing, you will see that kind of come into the market over time as sets become older. And then of course, once again, the biggest allure that Pokemon has always done is really just inviting people back because of something exciting that you tend to see with, whether it be Celebrations 25th, whether it be Evolutions. It's just, there's always going to be, that kind of hype that comes in waves. And that's just how it generally goes in just an overall market. Of course, Pokemon specifically has that kind of nostalgia appeal that something like, for, let's say, Bitcoin doesn't have, because Bitcoin is more of a technology rather than an actual nostalgia nostalgic item that you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited and nostalgic about Bitcoin. It's like, no, that's not how it works. So that's something that's always going to hold more weight to it, in my personal opinion. So that's just the thing that's really important to consider when understanding, hey, like this isn't just all of a sudden going to die out because of, future things. Like people are going to grow up at an age where you might not think it's good, but other people will enjoy that era, and so you have to really be conscious enough to really understand that decision. But even then, going back to it, when kind of talking about those demand trends, people thought the price at and people thought the demand and the price for a lot of the product at this time was absolutely ridiculous. And of course, a bubble did occur and a lot of prices really began to crash. But then once again, it really picked up and you saw prices even hit their all-time highs. And one thing I think that's also important to understand is a lot of people were really talking about how, oh, look at the Charizard first edition holo. That's insane that it's worth that much. It should never be worth that much. Or the fact of the matter that you saw that much explosive growth for the Charizard is absolutely insane. Well, if you actually want to take a look at the overall chart of the Charizard, when we're talking first edition PSA 10, we'll just take this one as an example. If you actually look at the growth that it had, starting from back in October 2016, and we can't see the data earlier than that, but it was around at its lowest point, around that $3,000 to $4,000 price point. And then you take a look at its growth over time, leading up until 2018. Which of course we take a look at the demand chart, it really started to things started to kind of fall down and hit their peak at around 2018. So that really goes to show you that even overall after the demand for the general product was going down, some of these Pokemon items were still going up in value. So it more or less had to, generally speaking, it really had to just correlate to what was happening with modern, because a lot of people were not really enjoying modern product at the time, and which is crazy to think about, because when you take a look and say to yourself, oh, I really love a lot of the modern sets, well, a lot of people didn't really have that feeling towards sets such as Guardians Rising, such as Sun and Moon Base, such as Crimson Invasion. Obviously, it wasn't until really the latter half of 2019 when you did have Hidden Fates come in, Cosmic Eclipse, Unbroken Bonds, Unified Minds, and that's when you started to kind of see that anticipation come back into the market. And WotC was kind of on its own path. Of course, you did start to finally see a decline, which is very interesting because it has its own different there's not really a direct correlation between WotC and Ultra Modern. They kind of do their old things at the time, but either way, it's not like the price of this WotC first edition card was all of a sudden at 3,000 and then boom, it went all the way up to that $400,000 price point. It's like, no, it went into a downtrend, and this could be an outlying variable that we don't know if this is true or not, because one sale is going to make a huge difference when looking at price points. Granted, it was a year later, so it's highly possible. But even then, like when making that argument, it went back to $40,000 in 2018. So the overall growth potential in the market was already exponential, going from around 4,000 to 40,000. That's a 10x growth on a card. And so then having it scale out to 400,000, why is that not something that is surprising? I mean, it's had a 10x growth prior, and then it has another 10x growth, further. And so obviously you can make an argument in saying that, oh, well, the time in which it took for it to hit that price point, from, start of 2017 back into 2016 all the way into, back into 2018. And then it really just took 1 year for this all to just absolutely explode and find its, price point peak, or I should say 2 years. So honestly, it's not even that crazy to show you the correlation between, okay, start of 2021 and start of 2020, and then the start of 2021. So it's like, yeah, this one took 2 years, this one took 1 year. Yes, technically speaking, it should have taken longer, but there are other variables at play. And so then the people will say in counter argument to that, well, different variables at play, then why does that mean that, we couldn't see something different hypothetically in the future? Of course, there's always that argument going to be made, but I would like to counter that argument by saying that, when you're talking about just general health within a market, you're always going to see that same, upwards trajectory just kind of explode over time. You see that highwards demand, sideways, 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 highwards demand, sideways, 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 and then highwards demand. You're making that kind of, straight line upwards growth over time throughout the hobby. And that's just shows general, healthiness of a hobby. So when talking about, okay, well, is this a hobby that is, extremely healthy right now, or is this a hobby that's, failing, or can we make predictions on the future and say Pokemon, in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be, dead, and there's no one's going to be in it? I think that's a foolish argument to make, because the charts in and of themselves have shown nothing but growth over time. I mean, even in the the spare times after the economy crash, I mean, you were seeing literally the exact same arguments made for a lot of other items and projects and so on and so forth, because the economy had crashed, and that's just what happens during economic downturns. And so you really started to once again see that regrowth and strength back into the market during the kind of XY era, especially under evolutions. And it's something that's just very important to kind of really consider, that, understanding that just because, speculatively speaking, we don't know the future doesn't mean we can't take, price points from the past and say to ourselves, okay, we could, make these predictions and say next 5 to 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the exponential growth for, that Charizard hit $1 million. And, I'm throwing out big numbers out here, and who knows, maybe it's 600,000, 700, 800,000, and who's to know how long that's going to take, Obviously, the cycle between here to here really was about a 9-year period, and that was because it dealt with a recession. This period did not deal with a recession. But even then, from here to here, it's about a 4-year kind of difference. So expectation-wise, I would say, generally speaking, as long as there's no catalyst or recession point, we can expect kind of a 3 to 5 year once it's really found its ultimate bottom. We haven't really seen that, personally speaking. If we're looking at this overall chart, it hasn't made that kind of, higher low or lower high. It hasn't made that higher low or higher high. So, personally speaking, I do think there's an argument to be made that we're still going in sideways action, and who knows if we're going to continue in sideways action for the next year, or whether, another catalyst does happen, because everything happening around the world. But, at the end of the day, I have major confidence within this market in the next 5 to 10 years, which is why we're having these conversations to begin with about economic growth. And so the whole point of me really saying this is, there was an argument made, about why people think that ultra modern is just not a good investment, because ultra modern product is being printed into the ground. And so therefore, because of that, ultra modern product is just going to be worthless in the future. But I think that's a really foolish argument to be made, because that was the exact same argument that was made back in 2016 about evolutions and other Pokemon products such as Roaring Skies and Primal Clash. And these items still in and of themselves have performed super strong from a long-term investment perspective. And so it mainly has to do with the fact of the matter that over time, the demand just scales out even greater, because more people are coming in than leaving. And that just shows, once again, a sign of a healthiness in the market. So I think that's very important for a lot of people to understand, that you don't want to repeat the past, or you don't want to, make prejudgments based on what could happen with the future, because you're not looking at the data points that have been made in the past, or the arguments, I should say, that have been made in the past, and just repeating itself. So that's kind of one of the biggest issues I feel like we have with our generation, or whether it just be with people in general. There's a natural tendency to have kind of a short-term, thought process in regards to things in life. And a lot of the times, history will repeat itself, because people tend to forget what happened and led up to an event in the past. And that's one of the things that I'm really wanting to preach. And the main kind of emphasis on this video is, don't let the history repeat itself, or don't get caught lacking when history repeats itself, and I think another chart I want to look at, this is going to kind of correlate to Pokemon, but this is a little bit off on it. Bitcoin. So, I've been in the hobby, or I shouldn't even say, I don't know if you consider it a hobby, but I've been in the market for Bitcoin for forever. I mean, you see the exponential growth of Bitcoin. So it had its first kind of market, kind of growth. The price of Bitcoin was literally pennies on the dollar. It went all the way up to, several $100. Everyone was freaking out. Crash. Went all the way up to, $1,000. And let's take a look at the time frame of this too, because, we've talked about this a lot. Bitcoin has a really high correlation rate in regards to the price correspondence to whatever is going on in the Pokemon world. So you say, okay, well, it had a market upswing, and that lasted, March 2013, and then it really started to shine once again near the end of the year. So that's a 1 year kind of cycle. Then you say to yourself from the high point, which is December, and then you say, okay, well, this cycle kind of lasted upwards. And then when did it find its true bottom? Well, it found its true bottom within, we say, about, I want to say, a year and a half, right? Okay, find its true bottom, and then boom, 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 goes up over time, finally finds another top, and then within its top goes all the way down, and he finds its true bottom once again. Literally within, we take a look at this, you say December 2017, yeah, and then you say, December of, 2018, it found its absolute bottom. These cycles are cycles that take typically anywhere between 1 to 3 years to occur, and that's just finding its bottom. That's not even talking about the sideways movement afterwards. You're talking about from, here all the way until it really found, its final growth period. That took about 3 years to kind of obtain. And when taking a look at this overall market cycle, when it did hit 1,000, and you're saying that, okay, it finally made a new high. That in and of itself took around, I want to say, about 2 years as well. So it's like the cycle length, you say 1 year, 2 year, and then 3 year. And then you're seeing what's going on with Bitcoin right now. It hit 60,000, took forever before it retested 60,000, and now it's doing this. And this is a cycle that's been going on for 2 years, and we don't even know if it's found its top. So all that's really happening is as more demand is coming into the market, and this is the same argument we're going to correlate with Pokemon, it's just going to take longer and longer for it to hit these price points, but that doesn't mean it's not going to hit these price points. It's just more kind of liquidity coming into the market. So because a lot of people talk about, well, it's going to take longer, to hit these price points. These price points are going to be hard to hit. Yeah, I agree. But if a large amount of people are coming into this market, then we're not going to, really have a major issue. And if you talk about just the overall general market cap as well, when talking about kind of the field of the value of Pokemon items as a whole, the total market cap, you guys can just take a look at that number. The total overall market cap for just Pokemon items in and of themselves, when you just take the value of graded, you're sitting at around 56,657,000, right? Now, of course, you're saying to yourself, well, Eli, this isn't including any of the overall sealed product. Obviously, you have a lot of these first edition base set booster boxes, and those are going for 400,000, and we have no idea how many, that there are in the market. But even if you want to just gauge that out, right? Let's say for the sake of the argument, let's just say there's another 950 million, which that means just purely based off of graded cards, market cap all the way to like literally a almost 20x. In comparison to the amount of sealed product, which I highly doubt it's that high of a number, but just for the sake of the argument, you're telling me that when it comes to just the general value of graded cards as well as held sealed product, and we don't know obviously these numbers, so this is just making hypothetical projections. You're saying to yourself the overall value of a lot of this Pokemon product from a market cap perspective is in the range of $1 to $5 billion. And even if you want to say to yourself, okay, well, let's say there's more, that's 10 billion, 50 billion, however much you want to say it, the overall market cap of a lot of these kind of larger companies, they're up in the hundreds of billions. And now obviously Pokemon in and of itself, cards as a whole, as a hobby, it's not like we're going to expect this to become an evaluation of Amazon. That's not at all what we're talking about. But when you take a look at the overall value of a lot of cards in the kind of sports hobby, I think we had this conversation last night where I think it was Jake that said literally one of the rookie cards of Michael Jordan is worth the valuation and market cap of just those cards alone of all of Pokemon product when it comes to just general graded cards. So it's just goes to show you that when comparing to other markets, because a lot of people like comparing Bitcoin to gold in terms of market cap potential growth, because of how much bigger gold is and that kind of market cap, you can really make that same comparison with Pokemon and say, hey, it's potential that Pokemon could see that growth long term. Once again, it's not guaranteed, but I don't think it's one of these things that people should really start to waver and the overall confidence of Pokemon just because It's one of these things where we're, speculative about the future. And if this is something that you truly do believe in, I think that you should also take a look at the history and not, take that same kind of fearful argument and then let it repeat itself, and you end up missing out on potential, opportunity to get into Pokemon, at amazing opportunities when you have, sets that are going to have these reprints, have had these reprints, and so on and so forth. So, and the whole point of this video is not to kind of make FOMO, in regards to the overall, like, you have to get in now, like, this is the opportunity. Like, that's not how it is. If you listen to this channel, that's not my kind of model. I always talk about making smart, educated decisions, and you never FOMO in at a high point. You always are getting in at these really nice bottom points, because there's always going to be opportunities that are going to present themselves. But the whole point of this video that I'm making it is just, once again, just understanding that don't let history repeat itself, and know that the Pokemon hobby and the strength of the hobby is here to stay. And there is a very, very strong argument to be making that within the next, 3 to 5 to 10 years, that the overall hobby in itself is going to still exponentially explode, regardless of any sort of the variables. All it takes is one thing. All it takes is one set. All it takes is one catalyst. And you could see that happen, with the Pokemon market, where it could potentially explode again. Obviously, like I said, I was very bearish in this hobby when I first really started recording videos. Well, this is my long-term outlook on it, because at the end of the day, there's a reason why I'm in this hobby. It's because I'm a huge believer of Pokemon product long-term, and I think that, there's going to be a ton of opportunities in regards to investing in Pokemon product in the near future. But kind of giving the main wrap-up points to the overall video. So for those people that skip to this part, the first point I'm going to make is, when you're looking at the historical chart of Google Trends demand, historically, exponentially, Pokemon has grown very, very rapidly within the past, 2004 to present. So historically speaking, there is a very, in my personal opinion, there is a very high possibility that you could see, once again, another, high point of exponential growth within the hobby within the next, 3 to 5 or 5 to 10 years, based off of what the data is showing us, regardless of the speculation of the future of the hobby. The next point that I also make is, don't let history kind of repeat itself. People were saying the same thing about Bitcoin when it hit 20,000, went all the way down to 3,000. There's always going to be opportunities in this market, and it's the best time to buy. As Warren Buffett says, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. Those are really going to be your best opportunities to kind of hop in the market. And being able to recognize the fact of the matter, that you want to make these educated decisions based on rationale and not emotions, and start to panic sell when things are going down, and start to panic buy when things are going up. So we want to be able to know that there is long-term potential growth within these hobbies, based on what we've kind of seen in the past, and the same arguments being made over and over again. The set isn't going to perform well because it's being overprinted, and then you see it absolutely explode in the XY Sun and Moon era, and then you're seeing the same arguments being made again. Don't be fooled by these arguments, because more than likely you're going to see them be made again, because demand over time is exponential, and it will continue to grow. But hopefully you guys found this video well. Hopefully you found a lot of this very much so informational. As always, make sure to leave a like, comment down below. And if you want to enter into our weekly giveaways, be subscribed and do both of those things. And then we post videos each and every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So you can enter in multiple times by just commenting and liking on each of those 3 videos. So 3 opportunities to enter, and then we have 3 winners on top of that. So 3 opportunities to enter, 3 opportunities to win. Each person will get 8 Brilliant Star booster packs, and once we hit 2,500 subscribers, then it's going to go up to 12 per person, aka 36 in a booster box. But as far as it goes, that is all I have for today's video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Until then, I will see you all on Friday. Peace.